In the year 1955, if there was an Oscar for the most rabid movie fan under the age 13, I would have won it hands down. And I hadn't seen a single movie. You see, I was born and brought up in the middle of virgin forest with only one best friend, the only friend, a baby elephant. That's a different story. It was British Raj. My father was a forest ranger. We lived all by ourselves, no other people within miles. We had no electricity. We had never heard of TV, no radios. So, in the evenings, my parents told me stories. Among them, the most memorable was my father would tell me how he saw one reel of a silent movie every weekend in his youth. So it took several months to finish a movie. But he was so excited when he told me the story, and I would ask him to tell me again and again, and he would. It was infectious. I was 4, and I was smitten. I fell in love with the idea of cinema. But then, between the ages of 14 and 25, 1955 to 1966, I saw 100 movies, more. How do I capture the rapture of those years in just a few minutes? I'll talk fast. You sit back, munch on the virtual popcorn while I tell you the tale. When I was 4, we crossed the river to a village where there was a primary school. I was supposed to get education, but more importantly, there was a town a mile away with a cinema theatre called Shankar Talkies. Yes, just then movies had begun to speak. Yeah, I'm that old. My cousin's name is Methuselah. I was ready for the movies, but alas, the movies were not ready for me. You see, the good news was there was cinema theatre in the town. But the bad news was they had a strange, evil custom. They had something called tickets, and you had to pay for them to see a movie. And my mother firmly believed that children should not touch money. Never mind that there wasn't any money to be touched. She was a proud woman. She elevated it to a moral principle. It was a sin. But I did see some minutes of several movies for free. And I forgot. I did see one movie in full. I'll tell you about it. Let me explain. The theatre in town had many tall exit doors. And those wooden doors had what? Like many of us in our life, we start out straight. The door started out straight, and then it got crooked. And it warped. And so it was like this, from the middle to the 2/3. So there were 2 of us. The tall one sat, and the short one stood. And if we kept one eye into the, that hole, imagine, be with me there, you could see at a distance the screen. The images were kind of elongated and weird, but hey, it was movies and it was free, right? But alas, the ushers, the cruel adults, would make periodic rounds and shoo us away. This was my first intro to the movies, through the cracks in the warped doors. And I tell you, we must pressure United Nations to make a resolution in the Security Council that every child that is born into this world must be allowed into a movie free till the age of 14. Okay. Now, I did tell you I saw one movie during my childhood. The lone movie experience I recall is when my brother, I was 9 and he was 16, invited me to go to a famous movie in our language, running in a big town 10 miles away. A late night show starting at 10:30 p.m. I think it was because that was the cheapest. He rented a bicycle. Yes, one could rent a bicycle for a 16th of a rupee for a day. And away we went, double riding. That means he pedaled and I sat on the pinion. The pinion was made of hard metallic wires. It was a clip which was supposed to hold grocery bags. The marks of those hard wires, I swear, are still on my derriere. We bought for a quarter of a rupee 2 tickets. There were 4 classes. The sofa at 1 rupee, the chairs at half a rupee, the benches at quarter of a rupee, and the floor at 1/8 of a rupee. Our limbs were limber. We squatted in what would now be admired as a yoga position on the floor for the 3-hour-long movie. Indian movies rarely ran less than that. They gave us our money's worth, otherwise we would protest. It was a most memorable experience, not for what happened on the screen, which was interesting, but for what happened off the screen. In fact, a few seats away from me. Let me tell you what happened. At the climax of the movie, the hero, a brave, noble king we had all fallen in love with, is coming down a staircase in his palace. He has a naked sword in his hand in hunt for the last and the deadliest of his enemies lurking somewhere. And he descends step by step by step, and a pin wouldn't dare to drop. Our hearts are pounding, but our breaths are held still. We know something he does not know. Suddenly, a scream rings out, reverberating in the theatre. The voice of a little girl. "Don't take the next step, he is there." You see, we all have seen the villain hiding just a step away behind a pillar at the bottom of the staircase. And we all want to scream and tell the hero. But only that little girl did. I've never forgotten the voice, the girl, the scene, my only movie memory till 14. But then something did happen to further light up my love of cinema. My uncle, in his youth, ran away from home and joined a theatre group in the big city. Starving actor and all that, of course, but he loved the stage. And when I was taken on a vacation at the age of 5 to my uncle's tiny hovel of a place, it turned out they needed a child actor for a 10-minute scene in a play that he was part of. My uncle chose me to play that role, maybe because it was near impossible to get a child who could talk, and I was supposed to talk incessantly. Yes, for those who know me, the habit dates back that long. I've never forgotten that experience. The theatre was actually a cinema theatre that was rented out for plays since there were very few available. They sat me down in the wings to wait for my scene, and then some kind Samaritan brought me snacks from a restaurant to eat while I waited. Oh, I can't tell you how thrilled I was. To this day, I salivate. You see, I had never eaten anything from a restaurant till then. Because, as I may have mentioned earlier, my mother's firm moral code about children not touching any money. So, instantly, I put 2 and 2 together and made 22. If going on stage meant restaurant snacks, hey, I'm your man or boy. When later people asked me if I had no stage fright, I was bewildered. Fright? I loved it because they feed you good stuff if you go on stage. You see, ever since then, the 5-year-old in me is expecting to be fed every time I go on stage. I sing for my supper. That's why I became a consultant, because consultants are paid. And you can buy lots of snacks with a consultant's fee. From then on, I was the choice in our town for all hero when he's a boy roles. And there were many. The town next to our village was one of the very few industrial towns in British Raj, India. British didn't believe in pampering their colonies. They wanted us to grow up independent and poor, so there was no industry. I was told there were 45, no less, theatre groups in that town of 40,000. The factory workers, lacking any other entertainment, wrote the plays themselves, produced and directed and acted in them. Every play was the life of some famous mythological or historical character revered by the Indians. Every play in the first half was the childhood of the hero or the heroine, with songs and dances liberally thrown in. I sang, said my lines, danced in all those roles. And yes, I acted a boy and a girl, since girls were not permitted to participate in such sinful activities as theatre, just like Shakespeare in England. The stage I acted on was the very cinema theatre stage. Irony, right? The very one I couldn't see the movies on or saw through the warped doors. Go figure. I now could feel a kinship with the movie heroes and heroines because they were actors and I was too, just like them. And I was on the same stage as they were, except they were on a white sheet and I was real. I went to the big city for college and I began to see the movies. How come? Did they suddenly let me in to see the movies for free? No. Old newspapers did the trick. You see, in the big city, I found out that if you sold old newspapers, you got just enough money to see the movies. No bus fares. We walked everywhere. Our slogan was, have legs, will walk. If time was money, we had it in plenty. But I had to make friends with those whose parents subscribed to newspapers. Where were you when I needed you? Saturday New York Times. That I paid for 3 movies every Saturday, at least. To this day, I belt out olden goldies from the Hindi movies of the 50s. But the English movies were where we saw the world, through the Hollywood eyes. Hundreds of movies over 11 years. I was reading every book I could get my hands on, tattered paperbacks, lent by brilliant college dropout journalist mentor. And then I saw the movie versions of many of them. Shaw, Wilde, Tolstoy, Chekhov, Graham Greene, Steinbeck, Jack London, Upton Sinclair, Sinclair Lewis, Tennessee Williams, Arthur Miller, D.H. Lawrence, and God. Yeah, that's 10 Commandments. A litany of greats. You remember Bridge on the River Kwai? Remember Colonel Bogey March? I could whistle it for you. And we learned history, geography, sociology, ethnography. I told my old aunt, people have hair the color of hay, and white people do not look like milk. And ta-da, we learned about sex. Yes, we had not even seen kissing, let alone done it. Indian movies forbade any sex. Our life was like in an antique shop. You touch, you buy. And at home, the only organ of the body you touched of any other human being was your elders' feet when you bowed down to them. So, when we heard that in the Hollywood movies, people actually kissed, teenage hormones sang in harmony with the Hollywood heroes and heroines. You see, Books couldn't do diddly bit in this department of life. I read Lady Chatterley's Lover, D.H. Lawrence. I read it twice, but the word description of a kiss does not, you agree, do it. It doesn't match an actual witnessing of a kiss and does not answer such important questions like, what do you do with a nose? Worse, two noses. Of course, seeing a kiss on the screen is not even remotely the same as actually kissing. But that's a different story. Meet me over a beer and we shall exchange deep thoughts about it. Hence, as far as the use of lips were concerned, you recall the hit song by Nancy Cole, "These boots were made for walking, they'll walk all over you." Well, our life was these lips were made for talking and they will talk all over you. When you met a girl, you talked, for God's sake. Platonic love, since no other variety was available. I realized later that Americans thought India had population explosion. Indians thought America had copulation explosion. It was the romance that got us, though, from 14 to 25, looking for love. Let me choose just two of my greatest favorites. I saw My Fair Lady 11 times, not fully, but it ran for so long the owner didn't care anymore if people walked in any time. So whenever I was in that part of the town, I would walk in and take in the movie from wherever it was. I sang the songs as lullabies to my children 20 years later. Eliza Doolittle says to that stuffed shirt, Professor Henry Higgins, at the end, I know there can't be any feelings between the likes of you and the likes of me. I remember counseling her, in my mind, of course. Come on, girl. He's just a man, and you're pretty and smart and everything. Go for it, girl, if you want him. I don't know why you would. He seems to want to go to bed with grammar rather than with a girl. But if you want him, go get him. Why you put yourself down like that, girl? I did lots of monologues like that with my pals on the screen. But I want to end with telling you about one movie. One movie. I have seen all of Bergman, Fellini, Satyajit Roy. You name them, I've seen them, all the immortals. But those are like watching the stars. Elizabeth Taylor, Marilyn Monroe, Meryl Streep. But my choice of a movie for the nightcap is The Girl Next Door. So here we go. Maestro, drum rolls please. Ladies and gentlemen, do you remember Affair to Remember? I mean the 1957 version with Cary Grant and Deborah Kerr. Do you? I bet you do. I know, it's not high art. Some critics may have called it chick flick, weepies. I'm no chick, yet I flipped for the flick. And what's wrong with crying a little? Or even a lot? Listen to these lines, dripping like honeysuckle dewdrops on a fall morning. The director must have said to the scriptwriters, don't hold back. Don't hold anything back. Go for it. Lay it on thick. If anyone who makes me cry the most number of times gets a large pizza with any topping your heart desires. Ready? Oh, you have the most beautiful place here. I wish I could stay here forever. No, you are too young for that, my dear. It's a good place to sit and remember. You're still to create your memories. And then this. Winter must be cold for those with no warm memories. And this. You've been crying. Beauty does that to me. No more tears. I told you beauty does that to me. And how about this? I was just looking up It was the closest to heaven. You were there. Ah, shucks, maestro. Violence, please. Go ahead, cry. I kept a lot of tissues handy. And go on, rent it. It's just $2.99 plus tax on Amazon Prime. Tell him Jai sent you. Watch it tonight with someone you love. That could be you.